Hey everybody, it's Rob Scheer, the host of Fostering Change and the founder of Comfort Cases. And by the way, I really hope that you like this episode. Do me a big favor, like it, follow us, subscribe, and also comment. Let me know. And if you know someone out there that you think would be a great guest for Fostering Change, reach out to us because we're always listening and wanting to hear great stories. Take care, everybody.
I remember when I did our very first season of Fostering Change, I thought one season would be good and then that would be it. And little did I know, season two, three, four, five, and now we are season six. First of all, I want to thank all of our listeners and our viewers, who keep sending me emails to say, okay, Rob, do another season, even though they hear when I say maybe this is the last one. But I also want to thank each and every one of you that have casted a vote to have Fostering Change be the #1 podcast in foster care and adoption. I truly do believe that how change comes about is how we educate each and every one of us. So many times I get letters and emails from people saying, I didn't know that, or I can't believe that you talked about that. We're going to do that again this season as well. But you know what? We're going to throw some things, a little twist that I've been wanting to do. I've been thinking about this for a while. Over the years, I have been so absolutely lucky to meet some of the most amazing humans, people who are truly changing the needles when it comes to children in our foster care system. My next co-host, my very first co-host of season six, when David, my producer, and I decided to do this, she was the very first person that I said to David, I have to reach out to her, because she is definitely someone that I have amazing conversations with. She is someone that I truly do consider my friend. She is someone that I truly see that she leads the way. She leads by example, and she truly leads in a way that, I admire every single day. So without further ado, the first co-host of season six, my friend Rita, the CEO and president of the Dave Thomas Foundation. Rita, welcome to Fostering Change.
First of all, you are much too kind. Thank you for those kind words. It is my honor. I can't believe 6 seasons. Look at you. Congratulations. I can't believe you asked me to be part of this banner season. So thank you for that. You are a dear friend. You lead the way. You make this world a better place. Thank you so much, Rob.
Oh my gosh. Rita, when I met you years ago, there was something about it that I just knew that we just clicked. And I am so lucky, that I do get to call you my friend. And so, you and I have had some amazing conversations. We truly do believe that, children should be the most important part of our lives. And you're showing that, through the Dave Thomas Foundation. And that's why when we decided to do a co-hosting, I actually got a book that I read and heard about and heard someone talking about, and I just was blown away. And I was kind of surprised because, being in the arena of foster care, I had heard of our next guest, but really had never met him. I had definitely kind of fanboyed in Facebook world and LinkedIn world because I was like, this guy is just amazing. His first book, just I couldn't put it down. And then when I hear he had a second book coming out, I said to David, David, we've got to do anything we can to get this guest on. And then I find out you know him. And so
I am so, it's true, and I'm going to let him tell the story. But he was one of the first people I connected with when I started at this position a long time ago. It was in 2001. So yeah, and we haven't talked a lot over the past few years, but as soon as we reconnect, it's like you, Rob. Oh my gosh, somebody that's so important in your life and somebody that feels like your best friend. Absolutely.
well, you know what? Without further ado, let's bring him on. We are so lucky to have Andrew Bridge. He is the author of The Child Catcher. I'm going to tell you something. Did a shout out on this book, because I have not read a book. And so normally I have to cap my guess like a month because it takes me forever. I've got so many books to read. This one, 3 days. Okay. 3 days. Andrew, welcome to Fostering Change.
It's an honor to be here. I'm so excited to see you. It's good to meet you. And Rita, it's actually so lovely to see you. It's amazing after this time, the things we've done together. And Rob, thank you so much. What you do is so important. You make a difference in the lives of children. Both of you make a difference in the lives of children every single day. And that means so much. It means so much to them. And I've said it means a lot to me. And so just thank you for having me.
Well, Andrew, we're excited to have you. I said this earlier before we had started that you actually were kind enough to send me not one, but two of your books. And I'm a true believer as an author that there are several things that you can do for an author. Number one, you love their books in your mind, you love their books in your heart. But the most flattering thing that you could ever do for a book, for an author, is pass it on. And so out of that extra book you gave me, I put it in a little library that we have in our little hometown. And it was in there with many other books. And I was surprised when yesterday, I actually had someone reach out to me and said that they got the book and they read the book and it was unbelievable. And I said, now do me another favor, write a review. So, want to make sure that we always talk about that. Listen, let's jump right into this. I want to talk about your very first book, though, The Hope's Boy, where you really talk about your being in the foster care system. Can you give us an overview of that?
Thank you. Yeah. So there you go, Rita.
I have to say, I have to interrupt you. This was the advance copy that was sent to me in 2008, I think, right before it went out. And it is literally dog-eared. There's yellow marks in it. I have read it and reread it over the years, and I reread it again this past couple of weeks, and I can't wait to dive into your new one. I had to say it. I had to show it.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. That's a surprise. My first book, Hope's Boy, was about my life with my mom as she developed paranoid schizophrenia. I was 6 years old. We were living together. It was her and me. Um, she became quite ill. We ended up homeless, living on the streets. Eventually, we ended up in a flop house of a motel, going out at night digging for food from dumpsters. And then one Saturday, she asked me to run around the corner and buy some cigarettes for her. And as I was coming back, a police car rolled up alongside me and asked me if my name was Andy. I said yes, and I got into that car and we drove another block, and there was my mom and a social worker. I always remember my mom in this case. She was in her a pair of jeans and a bra on the sidewalk, and they were arguing. And there was a shove and an argument, and the officer got out of the car, ran into it, and I ran straight into the middle of all of them. So there was this 6-year-old boy in the middle of these three adults. I've worked in foster care for a long time now, and I have to say it was one of the bad detentions, one of the bad takings of a child in an open public square where you literally have adults grabbing at his arms. I was pulled from her and I was then driven to a place called McLaren Hall. McLaren was an abandoned polio hospital that LA County had acquired. There were corridors and dormitories and tunnels, and I spent a year in that place. Um, I'm sure a lot about this, but it was a very violent place. It was a place where I, as a 7-year-old, was hurt repeatedly. And then finally, I left. Los Angeles County took me from there. I just actually stopped talking, and I was placed in a foster home. I stayed in that foster home for the next 10 years. I will say the thing about it is that, and I know Rita and you, Rita, you know this from your work, and you know this also, Rob, from your personal life, frankly, is at any time, all anyone had to ask that little 6-year-old was, Andy, do you have family? And had they asked that, had any judge, social worker, or lawyer asked that little boy that, he would have said, yes. I have a grandma, I have a great aunt, I have a great uncle, I have an aunt, and they're cousins. And those are just on my mom's side. My dad has more. And had someone asked that, I would have gone home and not spend the next 11 years in foster care.
Andy,
So,
I have to jump in here because, very much like you, when I went into the system, I was the youngest of 10 kids. So, don't think that I didn't have aunts and uncles and cousins and, on both mother and father's side. But the thing that I took away from it, when I aged out at 18 was they never came and looked for me. So for someone to ask me that question, um I felt more once again that I was the child. Why weren't they coming to look for me? They knew that I, was this boy in a home with other kids that were abused, that there was drugs, there was abuse, there was alcohol, there was prostitution, they all knew it. And then all of a sudden I'm gone. Why
Yeah,
didn't they come and look for me? Do you ever think that?
I do. And the answer to that is it's the department's responsibility to look for them. And it's called family finding. And that's what we need to do with kids because kids don't come without families. And so many kids can go home because there are people out there looking for them. I'll tell you a story. My mom actually passed away 2 years ago. And I took her back to New Raymer, Colorado, population 60, where she'd grown up as a little girl. And as we were having the graveside service, this car came racing up. We had no idea. It was just three of us. My partner's sister was actually giving the graveside eulogy. And it turned out to be my third cousin once removed. And she apologized for interrupting. And then after the service was done, and I said goodbye to my mom on my own, um, she looked at me as she was going from grave to grave, pointing out members of my family. And what she said is, you know, we all wanted to help that little boy. We just didn't know who took him. And so what happened was my mom and I were alone and we had descended into absolute poverty, absolute oblivion. But outside that oblivion, there were people looking for me. There was my grandmother. There were all those people that I talked about. As a matter of fact, when I was 13, they found my grandmother and refused to give me back to her. So it's really, really important that we remember these families do exist, that there are people out there who are willing to take kids out of these systems and not have that happen.
And Andy and Rob, you make such an important point about I mean, it's the current focus of the government, policy changes. How do we make sure that kids are connected to kin, that they go to kin or fictive kin? And yet there's such a poignant piece, if you don't mind my reading just a couple of your words, because so much of Hope's Child is such a vivid description of your life with your mother, your life with your grandmother, your life with your foster parents for 11 years. But I think part of the challenge with the change, even now with this focus, is this. You said, in the rush of bureaucrats, social workers, lawyers, and judges to determine the best interests of children, the uncomfortable subject of love becomes irrelevant. Children want to say nothing more than to be returned to their mothers, and mothers say they want nothing more than to be given back to their children. But the courtroom professionals stare at their shoes, uncomfortable of the sight of love existing alongside failure. So much is focused on changing that, and yet there are it will take a sea change to change internal attitudes of sort of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This child came from a family that caused harm, and so how can the rest of the family be safe? What are you seeing, Andy, as you move through systems, as you work with leadership? How is this change? Is this change happening, and do you think it can happen quicker?
Well, yeah, I think it's a wonderful point because virtually every foster care department in the family in the country, well, one, it declares it as part of its mission to work with families. They say we help families, and some of them outright have that in their name, the Department of Children and Family Services. And so I think we've gotten better. I think we realize the importance of these relationships. I think we know, for example, that the kids are most likely to go home are the ones that keep those family relationships alive. I ran an agency that actually recruited foster parents. And I saw moms come in, and it usually is moms. Moms come in and maintain that relationship. And so I think the thing that I think of is a mom may not be able to care for a child every day, may not be able to get that child out, up and ready for school, pick him up, do all the things my mom couldn't. But the one thing my mom could do is she could show that she loved me. And so I will use again myself, is she could have visited me. The time from the day that I was taken from my mom, she never met a single friend that I made. She was never invited to a single holiday concert. She was never included in summer plans. She never met a teacher, never saw a school. My mom could have done all of those things. And what that would have done is it would have kept that love between us acknowledged. And I don't want to say alive because it was always alive, but it would have let me know that it was still there and let me feel it. And I think that we have come better with that with families. If nothing else, we now recognize it and we talk about it and we say it's important.
Andrew, and I'm always the devil's advocate, and I get a lot of a lot of hate emails. I just don't see that we're there. I see this is what I see as I cross the country is once again, I see us making the mother as the bad person. I feel that if we are going to foster a child, we must foster the family. I think that we have missed that along the way. I think that exactly what you just said can make the difference between a child ending up in our, penitentiaries, drug addicted gangs, if we would just bring that parent, mother, as you know, most of them. And I can tell you that we've seen that in our family. I'm a father, my husband and I, we have 5 children. And one of our birth mothers, and birth aunt and birth grandmother, we made a decision, even though we were a closed adoption, to allow them and open our door to everything, every single concert, every single birthday, every single graduation, every single Christmas, every single Easter. There was always an invitation. And I will tell you, the majority of them would show. And now I look at my daughter who is 20 and my son who is getting ready to turn 18, and what amazing humans they are, and what unbelievable respect they have for their mother and their aunt and their grandmother who just passed away because we chose to foster the family, even though that adoption was signed. Don't you think we should push that more than we're seeing?
Yes, we should. And I don't deny the frustration. I don't deny that I don't feel the frustration. When I advise juvenile courts, for example, on what they should be doing and working with families, absolutely. And I want to say that just to thank you, and I know Rita, you know this too, from the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, that it's hard. It can be very hard for adopted families to do exactly what you did and what you've done. But that act of love for your children is extraordinary. And I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine it wasn't easy. But the truth of it is, your children, they remember where they came from. They remember those people that were once a part of their lives. And we do far more harm trying to pretend that they don't. And so to see them, you know, one of the things that I say is I eventually reconnected with my mom when I was 18. And the one thing that she said to me was, she said, I kept trying. I kept trying. And the thing that went through my head is, and I think goes through so many children's heads is, how am I to believe that you care about me if you don't care about the one person I love more than anything? And so, Rob, your ability to do that and your kindness and your love in doing that for your children is extraordinary. I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. We just got back from vacation and we took our 5th son. We brought his biological brother. And he's 3 years older than him, never had been on vacation, grew up in foster care, just like his brother did. And I will never forget when I called CJ and said, hey, how about going on a family vacation with us? He was just shocked, and my son just lit up. And I think that's what we should do. Listen, I want to jump right into your new book because we can, like, by the way, we got to do this again because we could talk about your other book, #1 bestseller. But your new book, The Child Catcher, I said it. I've not read a book in a long time that I've read so quickly and that I didn't want to put it down and that I want other people to read it. What made you decide after going through all that you did? And by the way, I know what it's like to write a memoir. I know how many hours of therapy that I had to increase as I wrote my memoir. And then when I actually did the audio, I did another 2 or 3 weeks of therapy increased. What made you decide to write a second book?
Well, first of all, you also need that therapy when just getting it published, I'd say. But a shout out to my publisher, Gretchen Young, who's absolutely wonderful and lovely. I'd say that in some ways, The Child Catcher is the book that I always wanted to write. When you read Hope's Boy, it starts out with me as a lawyer, a young lawyer right out of law school, finding a boy in a basement. And then it ends with me going back to that boy. That boy was in a facility in southern Alabama called Eufaula. Eufaula was a place that thousands of children had gone through. It was a place where children were kept in basements, children were harmed, and it is an example of what happens to kids who stay too long in the system. The kids who they're not forgotten, but they're lost. And for me, as a young lawyer, I can say at that point in my career, the most time that I'd ever spent in a hearing was my own foster care hearings. I'd never been in a courtroom. And so the story really is about not just winning a lawsuit and not just defending kids and not just closing a facility down. The people out of the state of Alabama should have shut down before, and things that happened there still have gone unrecognized. But also, it was about my relationship with these children and what it allowed me to do and gave me the courage to go ahead and become a children's rights lawyer. One of the heroes in the book, I'd say, and I can use his name. His name is Wayne Tatum. Wayne was a 13-year-old boy in this place. Wayne stood about 4'2", weighed 80 pounds. When I brought Wayne into, I don't know if y'all been in a Southern courtroom, but they're beautiful. And if you watch, for example, To Kill a Mockingbird, that's based on the Monroe County courtroom. That's exactly what they looked like. So I walked into this courtroom. This is the courtroom where Martin Luther King had appeared. This is where John Lewis appeared. This is where the March on Selma had been argued, all that. And I put Wayne into this beautiful mahogany witness box. You could barely see Wayne's head. He was so tiny. And I remember preparing him and knowing how much we're up against the state of Alabama. The attorney general for the state of Alabama was going to be there, and looking at him and saying, "You must not lie," knowing that the moment that he did, I as a lawyer wouldn't be able to protect him. Wayne was on that witness stand for 6 hours. Wayne talked about what had happened to him and so many other children in this facility, in this place. And I will say that these places that I'm talking about, they still exist all across the country. We spend billions of dollars on them, and they produce terrible outcomes for kids. These are the kids, when we look at former foster youth, who end up homeless. These are the kids who end up on the streets, who end up in places that we don't want them. No one would ever want any human being to be. And so this was that place where I learned how to be a lawyer, and I learned what it meant to be in that far end of foster care, and where I met what true bravery these kids were. These kids that have always stuck with me, and they mean a lot.
So when you think about these issues, Andy, and for the folks that are listening, not everybody's an attorney or can run a child welfare organization. What can the general public do more of or better of, or how does an individual step in and say, I want to help these kids too?
There are a lot of things. Now, I will say one of the things that the Child Catcher does is sponsoring CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates. And these are volunteers. They're across the country. There are 98,000 of them. And they actually go out and they sit down with children and they go to hearings. And the example that I often use is these are the individuals in a child's life who are often the only unpaid person in that kid's life, because foster care is so isolating. So I want to give a shout out to them, and you can volunteer. They'll train you. They'll stand by your side, and you'll stand by the side of a child as he or she or them walks through the system. The other thing, what I really truly wish, truly wish we talk about these 400,000 children. The next time you drop your eighth grader off at that middle school, ask a teacher, how many foster kids go to this school? And what happens to them? What are you doing with them? Do you know anything about them? Or the next time you go in a grocery store, just look at the manager and say, hey, do you ever hire foster children for summer jobs? Just bring it up in daily conversations. You don't have to do it every day, but just occasionally, And I think to bring that is so important. One of the examples that I use, and we know this system is failing, and I think it's important to really bring that home. And so what I would ask is there anyone who's listening to this that can honestly say that they would feel comfortable leaving their child with their local foster care department for the weekend? And I'm betting the answer is no. And that's a problem. And so we need to engage with these communities. We need to realize that the vast majority of kids who are taken from parents are taken because of poverty, because their parents are poor. They've never laid a hand on their child. They've never abused their child. They are simply poor. And there are much better ways of dealing with poverty than removing children.
Yeah. And I've always said it just blows my mind that we can give a stranger a check, but we can't give a helping hand to a family who truly do love their children. And I think that's the big mistake. I want to jump back into some kinship because we're hearing this across the country right now, really pushing kinship. The problem that I'm seeing, though, is that once again, we are not realizing that it does take a lot to raise a child. And all of a sudden, you're here in kinship and you have another mouth to feed. Your water bill increases, your electric bill increases. Why can't we as a country, you know, give kinship families the same that we're giving families who we put as foster parents? I feel like we're literally setting them up to fail, not to take the child, because we're not giving them that helping hand that they could use that truly, as you said, could make the difference, of that child being with family compared to being with strangers.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendously missed opportunity. Now, there are some foster care systems across the country that do that, that help kin and provide that kind of financial support that you're talking about and other supports. But I will use, for example, my home state of Arizona. It doesn't do that. It doesn't provide the level of financial support for kin. It doesn't help kin. And what I say, when we talk about looking for children's families, you got to do more than just place a phone call and say, we have this child, would you like them? You've got to engage with them. You got to say, we're going to help you. You've got to say, we can offer financial support, but also support for this child while this child is in your home. We know that this is tough, but we can help you do this. I'll give an example. That boy, Wayne, that I talked about in the child catcher, he had a grandma. That grandma could have taken him out of the system at any time, and she wanted to. She asked over and over and over again, and the state never helped him. That boy, Wayne, from the time that I met him from the child catcher when he was 13 years old, he left foster care at 18. He'd gone through 40 placements. That means one placement every 6 weeks. He left home with a GED and a bus ticket back to Andalusia. It took Wayne 5 years to get back to that grandma who wanted him. And so, I think that we can do this. There's the possibility of doing this. I think it's about recognizing, one, that there are the financial means to do this. And we could go through the policy and all of that. And I've participated in that policy, did it in Los Angeles, I've done it other places. But I think it's also about, that notion of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, the notion that these families actually are worth something. We need to acknowledge that. We need to respect them and to say that they have integrity. And I just want to use one example, and that is to talk about a group of families that is so disproportionately, and that's a kind word, affected by the system, and that is Black families. By the time a Black child, a Black boy or Black girl reaches age 18, half of them will be investigated by their local foster care department. They are twice as likely to be placed in foster care. And at every point in the system, they are less likely to go home. They're less likely to be reunited with kin. At every single point, they do worse. And so when we talk about families, it is so important that these kids not be allowed to linger into this system. Just as I didn't need to linger in that system and not go home, not have an adoptive family, not have a guardian. Because one of the very, very worst things that can happen to a young person is to leave at 18 and literally have nothing. That's a frightening place to be in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so much of what you've done for so long, Andy, is put yourself out front and talk about your story in very, very incredible detail. You know, who of us wants to talk about some of the things that happened way back when and talk about it again and again and again and put it in a book. And I saw, you're doing lots of video virtual parties with CASA programs to talk about this with CASA programs because of the generosity of you and the publisher of sharing a portion of proceeds from the child catcher. I guess my question to you is, how do you take care of yourself during all of this? Because it's such a focus on everything that's happened to you personally. Of course, all the good that's happened with the work that you've done as an attorney, as an advocate, as a leader. But how do you take care of yourself personally?
Well, first, I want to thank you for asking that question. Um, I will be honest, sometimes it can be a little tough. Overwhelmingly, people have never asked a cruel question. They've never asked a question that was designed to be hurtful or anything like that. One of the things that's so important is not to just talk about myself, but to talk about how, I wasn't reunited with my grandma. Okay, that happened, but there are thousands of kids in foster care right now today who can. And so I think that for me, one of the biggest things is to be able to take what happened to me as a kid, and I think we probably call this a bad case, but going ahead and taking what happened to me and being able to, for example, sit down with a child and knowing without them ever having any idea that I grew up in the system like they are, but have them feel there's a connection, having them feel that there's some part of me that gets them. And that is so incredibly rewarding. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah,
So thank you.
appreciate
Yeah, you know what? I have to say it. You know what? You are one of those people, Andrew. You do not blame the system. You want us to help change the system. And I think that that is something that each and every one of us can walk away from knowing. It's taken many years, just like you, not to want to blame, but to truly make change. And with having friends like you and Rita, and people who are really pushing the needle. I do believe that we will see change within my lifetime. Everybody, the book is called The Child Catcher. The link is going to be right here. Do me a big favor. Purchase the book. Purchase it for a friend. Understand that proceeds of this book actually go to CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates. You all know how much I love them. I talk about them all the time. I feel that they are the only ones when it comes to children in foster care who are doing it without zero. And they do it for the love in their heart. And I just recently interviewed a CASA, very well-known record producer in LA, and he had met me and then all of a sudden decided he wanted to be a CASA. And he just got his license. And I interviewed him on my podcast last season. And here's a guy who didn't have to do it. And I said, why? And he said, because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a difference. And I think that that's what we all want. Listen, everybody, what a great way to kick off season 6. Oh my gosh. I was not expecting a conversation like this. This was amazing. Rita, thank you so much for taking time out. By the way, we have many, many episodes left. So don't think you're not going to get another phone call. And Andrew, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you. I want people to read your first book, this book. I want, like I said, you definitely are someone I look up to. And I just want to say thank you for being what we say here at Comfort Cases is a good human. So thank you for that. Rita, any last words?
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Andrew. Two of my favorite humans on the same screen. How lucky a woman am I today? I just want to thank you both for your compassion, for your advocacy, for your belief that every child deserves every opportunity to grow and thrive. You are both making such a difference in this world, and I couldn't be more honored to be here with you today.
Well, thank you. And Andrew, you and I are going to grab that coffee one day real soon. Listen up. Listen up, everybody. This is another amazing episode. If you know someone that you would like to have as a guest, please do not hesitate to email info@comfortcases.org. Any questions that you have, please send them this way. And always remember, I say this quite often, go out there and be a good human. And you do that by leading by example. Take care, everyone.